Hello, and welcome to another SCOUTCAST brought to you by Fantasy Football Scout. As always, you are joined by me, Andy, FPL Mode, and we are also joined by Seb, who's in a hotel room. How's it going, Seb?
Hey mate, it's going well, thank you. Yeah, I know I have something more interesting than the normal little white background. Just, the plain wall. There's a bed, as hotel rooms come with, and look, like a Bond chair thing.
I
I can do the
like it.
proper. I won't do it now because I will wipe everything off this desk. But like I could do the little spin, team reveal on a Bond chair.
Oh, it's all about the spins tonight, isn't it? I'm assuming your wife knows you're in a hotel room with your whole setup and everything.
Well, she does now, mate. Thanks.
Oh, lovely. She's an avid listener, isn't she? She loves Rich. And Rich, you're not in anywhere quite so swanky. You're like shaking your
Excuse
head.
me.
How's it going, Rich?
Yeah, good. It's very swanky here.
Yeah? It's
Yeah,
looking all right,
yeah,
actually. Yeah. I think
yeah.
it's still yellow walls. What's going on? Are you going to paint those for us soon, or?
I've been busy. Been
Been
but
busy.
maybe after the Game Week 1 deadline, I'll have time.
Lovely stuff. Thanks so much for everybody that's joining us in the chat. We got over 100 people in the chat already. Make sure you like and subscribe so you get to watch us every Monday, because we are going to be here for you every Monday of the season. So make sure you are liking and subscribing, because then you won't miss anything. Now, tonight we have got a very interesting evening because we have got a little bit of something different for you. We have the Dilemma Spinner. That's right. In all this age of AI and technical advancements, I've gone with a spinner. So we've got a dilemma spinner that we're going to go through. We've got 10 dilemmas on there, and I'm going to chuck the dilemmas at these boys, and they're going to see if they can answer them for us. We have specifically been told, do not sit on the fence tonight. So as much as possible, they're going to try not to sit on the fence. But we will see. Sometimes you have to, but we will see. We've got our drafts. We're going to see how our drafts are doing so far. There are some similarities and some differences. They are very different to the last time we did this, at least. Then we're going to be doing our predictions for the year, which hopefully somebody in the chat will kind of keep track of and then kind of grill us at the end of the year when we go back to them. We've got the community team, which some people have been doing for us. Thank you so much, Rank Chaser, who has been heading that up for us. I think there's about 25 people in a group chat who have made the community team. I'm going to show you that tonight. And then we got a bit of a Q&A as well. So, lots of people in the chat all going mad for the spinner. Thank you so much. I'm glad you're enjoying it already and you haven't even seen it. Shall I show you it? Seb and Rich yeah, they're so excited. They don't even know what to say. So here it is. This is the Dilemma Spinner. I'm not going to lie, and I've said this multiple times to Seb and Rich, I'm very excited about this. So the 10 dilemmas that we have on the spinner tonight are surprising Spurs. Spurs are... actually, I won't go into detail yet. I'll do that when we spin them. Surprising Spurs, myriad of Arsenal mids, Brighton Boys, which 6.5 mids, just Haaland, ? No Salah or No Salah, Chelsea Renaissance, Onana, what's my name, bench fodder, and differentials. Okay, I know people are going mad in the chat. They're like, wow, this is amazing. Tell me about it. I should mention, by the way, above average FPL, they do a spinner. I asked their permission to use this spinner that is the third hit on Google, and they said, yes, I could use it. So thank you very much. I'll pay them the money duly. So what we're going to do, we're going to spin the spinner, and I'm going to take it in turns asking you guys to try and fix this dilemma for us, because these, as I can see at the moment, are the biggest dilemmas that everybody is facing in the FPL community based on making their team in the next coming days. So let's have a go at spinning it. Boom. It's going. It's spinning. It's making me a little bit dizzy, but it's fine. It could do with a few sound effects here, I think. Here we go. And the first one is differentials. So, Rich, are there any differentials that you're thinking about putting in your team? Should we be putting differentials in our team? And does it have to just be one player, or could it be a combination of players that make your differential in your team?
This was the one I hated the most, so I'm glad this one came up first.
Lovely.
Yeah, because it feels like the template's so strong, so everything's moving the same way. Like a player might be a differential for a while, and then they're not. But
yeah.
I suppose double or triple Chelsea defence could be a differential. Ooh. Although I think a lot of people are looking at it because obviously Colwill is offering good value.
Yeah.
Even though there's a debate if him or Botman are better. So I guess going for combinations of players, and also the obvious ones are going to be the premiums, like Salah, Kane, for example. And so I see Salah's just got a goal and assist just as we've begun. So for him, he's going to be a huge differential
Yeah. I mean, Salah, you've just mentioned there. We've got him on the spinner, so we'll get to him in a minute.
Oh, okay.
But Kane, you've just mentioned, it's looking more likely than it was a couple of weeks ago that Kane might still be there. Surely he is the perfect differential going into the season.
I was thinking this earlier. He's been a differential most seasons, as in the last few years in recent memory. Like I remember during the peak of COVID, as it were, he was like 3% EO. People were saying he's a defensive midfielder now. He's finished. And even the last couple of years, it felt like he was quite a big differential game week 1. So I don't think it's anything new. He's just obviously very, very expensive. There's some doubts over if he'll stay in the league. It's looking today like he will be. Yesterday, it was looking like he wasn't going to be. We've still got, 3 weeks of the window left, though.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's a differential with quite a bit of risk. And I don't think him scoring 4 goals yesterday really changes much. I mean, one was a penalty, and I mean, we know Kane's good.
Yeah.
So I don't think it really changes much. It just reminds you that he can be good. A bit like Haaland not scoring yesterday. I saw some very few people, starting to wonder. I think he's had very few goals over his last few appearances. But eventually he'll send a reminder as well. So on Kane, true. I think that was just a reminder yesterday of what he can do.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on Kane? And have you got any players that have gone in and out of your team that happen to be low owned, but you expect to do well to start the season?
I mean, Rich mentioned the double Chelsea defence, which is maybe something I think I've got later. I like that. I'm partial to a Chelsea fullback. But in terms of Kane, I've not really looked at having him at all myself. I wonder because we mentioned Salah, and that feels like the main thing where you'd build a Haaland team with Salah or without Salah. You probably wouldn't build a Salah team without Haaland. Maybe you would. If you're going Kane, maybe just because it's the same position, I feel like you have to remove Haaland. You, of course, don't. You can have Haaland and Kane, but that is presumably a 3-5-2, 4-4-2, maybe. It feels a lot more rigid, and so I'm not quite as excited by it. And so then your other option is replacing Haaland with Kane. I don't see that. Even if, that's the silly thing, isn't it? What, did he finish like 9 points or 7 points or something behind Haaland last season? But, Haaland went off a little bit at the end. Fewer minutes, although not many fewer as we might have expected. But that felt very much like Kane really pushing his ceiling and ridiculously Haaland maybe just hitting par or something, which sounds silly, maybe a little bit over par. But I feel like of the two of them, Haaland could have so much further to go. Doesn't mean he would. Whereas Kane probably is going to return about there again. So, and with effective ownership, of course, it's a thing. You have to think about in a decision like that. I don't think I would back Kane over Haaland. Obviously, if he leaves, that takes the question out of it for us. Yeah. So I wouldn't build a Haaland and Kane team, I don't think, personally.
Yeah, it's interesting because I chucked a draft out today, and I think Pedro being an option now at 5.5 does actually unlock a bit of a 3-4-3 for maybe going Kane. It means you have to go a little bit lighter in midfield, but it does open that option. So it's interesting. I think Kane is one of those differentials that maybe people aren't thinking about, that they're maybe starting to put into their team, which is interesting. And double Chelsea defence I quite like, but we're going to talk about Chelsea a little bit later as well. So
the main thing with that as well is captains, right? It's probably one of the reasons a lot of people don't have Salah. I know Saka, captain first game week might be a good move, but generally you're probably going to captain Haaland. So Kane or Salah aren't bringing utility for what they are costing if you can't give them the armband at least half the time, probably.
Game week 5, I think that will be the one where we're talking about Spurs captains potentially. They're at home to Sheffield United. City are away at West Ham. So I think that would be the one, if you start with Kane, to be honest, I don't think many people will. I think that would be the one where you'd have to captain him. And they've also got a really nice run of fixtures. Yeah, game week 3, Bournemouth, then Burnley, then Sheffield United. So, yeah, maybe we'll be having Kane conversations, quite early, on the game week 1 and the game week 2.
Yeah, I think potentially.
SCOUTCAST.
Yeah, well, maybe we move off some of those like United and Arsenal midfielders and free up a bit of cash for up front. Could happen, couldn't it? Right, let's move on to the next spinner. Here we go. Ready? It is spinning. It's spinning. Sorry, anybody that's... doesn't like flashing lights. It's probably not the best. Make sure you look away while it's spinning. Oh, and we are on Brighton Boys. Now, Brighton Boys is an interesting one. I made sure I put this one in here because it seems to have changed dramatically who people are going for Brighton. Pretty much everybody had double or triple Brighton at one point. Then everybody was slowly going off Brighton. And now suddenly it's starting to creep in a little bit more. I mean, Seb, if we go to you first, my man, who have you got for Brighton at the moment, and who do you see as players that we could get?
Who have I got in my team, or just
Yeah, for
consideration-wise?
Brighton, yeah.
Estoupnan is one that I think everyone's pretty much got, and it's weird because I guess at first it didn't feel like an absolute slam dunk, but as that ownership creeps up, you maybe feel that pressure to include him in a team that you maybe otherwise wouldn't have done. Very first thing I did was go Steele. I think Steele's relatively safe over Verbruggen at least, or Verbruggen or whatever it is, over the first few weeks, I would say. Medium term, maybe more of a question. And then the question becomes a forward, a midfielder. Have we had that answered for us in the last few days, maybe, with Pedro becoming the pick of choice, especially with another midfielder in Kudus who can play like 8, right wing, left, 10, whatever it is coming in midfield, who, by the way, is excellent. Yeah. Looking at some of the numbers, we've got just on the Scout members area here from last season per 90. Dennis Undav came with 0.76 XGI per 90, but limited minutes last year, probably very limited in minutes this year, so we don't need to worry about that. And Zisco actually came top, 0.57 out of all of the rest. Ferguson just behind him, and then there's a bunch in that sort of 0.4 to 0.555 range, which would be your Welbeck, Matoma, March, Pascal Gross, just bringing up the rear there. You'd want him to have penalties though, and it looks like Pedro might have penalties, which is a big thing for him.
Yeah.
But on Kudus, we have him coming in from, I have it here, I will just pull it up for you. I think it was 0.76 or penalty, including penalties, but not taking them, I don't think. So XG plus XA last season per 90, 0.73 I have here, but in an Ajax team. So we probably want to knock a bunch off that. But even if we knock 0.2, 0.3 off, he would be in the middle or just bringing up the rear of those other Brighton midfielders. So a very suitable pick in terms of FPL for going into that bunch. If he's more nailed, great, but that's going to take someone else's spot, which is probably where we've seen everyone but maybe Matoma take a hit in popularity, because it's probably the one position where he isn't going to maybe see a minute's hit, unless, of course, there's knock-ons elsewhere. But as I said, I'll come back to Pedro. I think that's maybe become an easy solution for everyone, right? Just work him in up front. Hope he's got minutes. I'm not as sure about that. There's Welbeck, there's Ferguson, but with penalties, maybe that makes it up. And the nice thing is, if we can just get away with it for 3 weeks, we can then move on elsewhere if we need to, because the fixtures take a turn.
So, Rich, Seb just so eloquently explained all about Brighton there, which is awesome. He's mentioned Pedro a few times, and we'll see Pedro in a few of our drafts later on as well. My biggest worry with Pedro is that he's 5.5 million. And if we start the season with him after game week 3, how do we move off of him? And just kind of tell us what you feel about Pedro as well.
Yeah, he was the interesting thing yesterday, because I think at first when he scored the penalty, I thought a lot of people were overreacting. But then actually, when you think about it, he has scored a penalty with Gross on the pitch. So that's pretty big information to get. He seems like a player, though, that's been highly touted for years. And I was really surprised he's still only 21, because I remember when Watford were in the Premier League, again, I think it was the 2020 season, 2020-21. He was really highly rated then, so I guess he must have been like 18.
Yeah.
Back then, he didn't really tear it up for Watford last season in the Championship, but then obviously Brighton are good. De Zerbi, is an incredible manager, and like we just said, he's young, so there's definitely room to improve there. I'm not 100% set on him though. I mean, I've got Watkins in my team at the moment. I feel like I could switch to Pedro, if I want to enable something to happen. Obviously, having penalties is huge. Their fixtures aren't that great. I was looking on the ticker. I mean, they've got the second best fixture in game week 1, home to Luton. Only Arsenal on the Scout tickers higher. But then when you search by attacking in game week 2, I mean, it's very middling. Wolves away for an attacking fixture. Obviously, taking in mind that Brighton are very, very good. Then it's West Ham at home. And then it does, like you say, it tails off. So I don't know where he sits in my team. I mean, if you have him game week 1, I think it's an easy start.
Yeah.
But then down the line, do you switch to a 4-5-1 and he's your first sub? Because we did talk about players like Pukki and Solanke the other week, where I like having them as a first sub. So maybe Pedro could be that, but then he's not 90 minutes like players like them. So it feels like a gamble, but I prefer him to Carlton Morris, for example.
Yeah,
if that says anything.
Yeah, no, I do agree. I think he's one of those. He's the last kind of bandwagon kind of a smaller bandwagon, because he's definitely not a big one, but he's kind of that smaller bandwagon just before game week 1, isn't he? And is it right to have him as a bandwagon? And I think both you and Seb have just said, like, he's definitely not guaranteed. This is still a bit of a gamble going for someone like him, because his minutes aren't potentially going to be up there. Brighton are going to have so much rotation this year. You can see it already, and that's without the addition of Kudus as well. So it's going to be really interesting to watch them. Before we move off this one, I just want to check with both of you. If you were to pick your 3 Brighton boys that you wanted to go with to start the season, who would they be? And how many do you think you are realistically going to be going into game week 1 with? So, Seb, if we start with you, who would be your 3, and who would you be starting with in game week 1?
One of Steele and Estupiñán, and then Pedro up front. Midfield feels like a bit of a minefield. I guess you go Matoma if you want one. I would be tempted to say, if I was going 3, Steele, Estupiñán, and Pedro, for flexibility as vending, so I can move off elsewhere. And then the 2 I'll be going with would be one of the defenders, one of the and Pedro.
Yeah. Rich?
It's tough, because I think a lot of these picks now, you're not necessarily picking them just because they're Brighton players. I mean, if you're going Pedro over Watkins, for example, I think it's because you have more faith in going for like Martinelli or Odegaard in midfield over someone like Eze, for example.
Yeah.
So, because I think there's no doubt in my mind, or in most people's minds, that Watkins is a better pick than Pedro. So I think Pedro is a perfectly fine pick, but you're picking him because of other players in your team. A Steele pick, I like it, but I would only do it if I was rotating. I mean, he's in my team at the moment, but if you're doing rotating keepers, like rotating 4.5s, unless Turner becomes an option at 4.0, because, I mean, there is some risk with rotation. I know some people were saying because he conceded a bad goal yesterday, I don't think that necessarily one moment's going to cause that, but I guess you never know with De Zerbi.
Yeah.
So, and then there's this doubts over Matoma. There's loose links to him to go into City. So I don't know if that will happen. It sounds unlikely, but
God, I can't see it.
There's rumours out there. So, and there's going to be a lot of rumours in the coming weeks as well. So to answer your question, Pedro, but it's dependent. Steele. And Estupiñán as well. And I guess Dunk's now an option because he's been playing in pre-season, which he wasn't previously.
God, it's all the knock-on effects, isn't it? Like, Jesus getting injured, all of a sudden we need that other Arsenal player, and it's obviously a midfield that we're looking for, and all of a sudden Matoma's just dropping off into so many midfields, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not really based on Brighton at this point, is it? It's based on the rest of the team and the prices they offer.
Yeah.
I think the point Rich makes there as well, I think, is a good one. It makes me think, are we going Pedro just because we're like, oh, Brighton, good team, green on the ticket to start with, therefore I want Brighton? Whereas FPL is obviously a game of picking individuals, not necessarily teams. There is definitely a world where you go, yeah, Brighton have got good fixtures and are a good team, but I can't find an individual that is good enough for me, so I'm happy to leave that team alone. I think it's very tempting to try and get a bit of the pie when, every part of the pie is too small.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we talked about it last week, where Brighton were a team, historically, we couldn't really pick their attackers. There was just that point last season, which happened to coincide with all the doubles and triples, where there were actually nailed attackers in that team. But obviously, even towards the end of the season, that started to change a bit, like March being dropped suddenly and McAllister missing more and more games. So maybe that was just a brief moment where we could own Brighton attackers. Maybe that's starting to end now until we get more clarity.
It's just those first 3 fixtures.
Because we haven't even mentioned Ferguson, or maybe Seb did, but he was being hyped when the game dropped.
He'll play as well, and they got Welbeck as well. It's really going to be tough for those positions. Right, let's have another spin. Here we go. Next dilemma. Oh, only 8 left. We've gone through 2. Oh, got to speed up a bit on these. Here we go. It is. Rich, we got to start with you. It's Mo Salah or No Salah. Here we go. So, obviously, the whole time we've been doing these drafts, every time we've streamed so far, we've been saying no Salah. And the reason we've been saying no Salah is because we've got Haaland there and it's too tricky to kind of build up those funds. All of a sudden, all these strikers seem to be just dropping like flies. And Kunku looks like he could be out for a while. Jesus is definitely out for a little bit. Watkins seems to be literally just the next man down. Pedro is 5.5, so he's a lot cheaper, and people are suddenly freeing up funds. Is it something that we need to look at? We've already mentioned Kane. Is it something that we need to look at? Can we start putting Salah into our drafts again? Or is it that we go for someone like Trent instead? Because that game week 2 fixture is still there, isn't it, against Bournemouth at home?
Yeah, I mean, if I was going to go for Salah or Trent, it would be Salah, just because that game week 2 captaincy.
Yeah.
It's hard not to overreact because obviously he's just scored and got an assist in the first half. Although that team he's playing against, I thought their badge was like the Scouts or the Beavers or something. So they are in the Bundesliga though, I believe. I just never seen their badge before today.
Yeah.
I'm very torn because João Pedro, he could, if we can trust him, he's kind of that player that's now enabling people to put players like Salah back in drafts. I have played around with that, but I just like the idea of having a better bench that can rotate in the future. So I am leaning No Salah. I'm not too nervous. I mean, he's going to score goals. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, he really is as well. Like, we know he's going to score well. It's just, can you own him and the rest of your team still look okay if you've got Haaland as well, isn't it?
The dilemma I have is even when I free up the money, then I have to get rid of Rashford or Bruno.
Yeah.
So I've made a downgrade elsewhere. I've weakened my bench, and then I still have to get rid of Rashford or Bruno, and I can't decide which one to get rid of.
Yeah.
So there's that as well. It's really tricky to get him in.
What do you
I
think?
don't know if I'm confident enough, but we still got a few days to decide.
We do. I mean,
yeah.
Seb, is there any world where you go with Salah in game week 1?
I mean, I guess there's definitely a world, but it doesn't. I think, as Rich said, it's more about the team than necessarily the players, because like Kane scoring, what was it, 4 yesterday, Salah's got a goal and an assist. You can't be surprised that one of the best strikers in the world and one of the best wingers / forwards in the world are doing goals. That's what they do. Mm-hmm. If you aren't picking them because you thought they weren't going to get many points this season, then, well, bad times. We're not picking them, not because we don't think they could go and get 20, 25, 30 combined goals and assists each, but because we think not having them means we can have a stronger team overall, which I guess you could break down to be like, Salah might score, what did we say last week, like 250, 260, 270 points. Rashford might score 190. So if that's a deficit of 60, 70 points, can I gain 60 to 70 points from that 3 million or so that I could be putting into a forward? So that would be changing a 4.5 into Nkunku. I think so. Obviously, there's other knock-ons as well. Then with team structure and stuff. Yeah. But we're obviously gambling that we can gain more points elsewhere. And again, the captaincy comes into it. If Haaland got injured, we'd probably all immediately go Kane if he was still here, right? But Salah would become much more of an option because you're going to be needing that captain every week too. Maybe if Rashford is on it, we'd be looking at Rashford. But doubling those points of the expensive players is why they're expensive. On their own, they aren't necessarily worth it, at least compared to how you pull points from the rest of your team. Yeah. And something I just wanted to throw in here as well, if I may, is just an opportunity to talk about Liverpool. I just pulled up some numbers, again, from the Scout Mems area last year for the Liverpool team. So Darwin Núñez, 0.93 combined penalty XG, but again, he doesn't take them. But XG plus XA for last year, that's crazy. It's like Haaland level, genuinely Haaland level, and he doesn't have penalties. But minutes, so fair enough. Leave him alone until you get too excited. Salah, obviously, right there, 0.8. He does have penalties, at least we assume he almost certainly will. Hakpo there with 0.77, which is good, but maybe playing a bit more of that midfield role this season. If he is up front, it's going to be dropping deeper to allow the shape to work. Diego Jota there with 0.69, although from not as many matches last season. So I did just check what he got the season before, which was 0.84. So even better. So maybe somewhere in the middle would be nice.
He seemed a bit low there.
Yeah, well, I mean, 0.69 is very healthy, but yeah, absolutely. 0.84 was his number the season before. So maybe somewhere in between the two. You've got a floor, you've got a ceiling. I've messed that up, haven't I? Szoboszlai, or yep, we'll go with that. That works. You know who I mean. I tried to not Dutch up for booking too much earlier, and then I didn't, and yeah, now I'm all flustered. But he comes in with 0.5, obviously from Leipzig there as well, so we can maybe have a look at that as well, depending on how it will translate to the Premier League and what position he plays. Now then, last on my list is Luis Diaz with 0.36, which sounds horribly low. But the season before, just to balance that out, he came in with a 0.58, which is a little bit healthier, still further down this list. But if that was skewed more towards goals, we would obviously get more points in FPL. So clearly, Darwin and Salah are the two you want. But one is minutes and one is expensive. So I wouldn't be surprised if when a Liverpool fixtures come up and maybe someone's injured or suspended, we don't dip a little bit deeper and maybe are looking at Jota Diaz, Hakpo, something like that.
Yeah, Jota's an interesting one. Right, let's move on to the next spin. Here we go. And the next spin, Rich, be ready because it's going to be on you, my friend. It is, just Haaland, ? So we're going to be talking about, obviously, pretty much everybody has Haaland, and rightly so. He's the captain for the first 8 game weeks, I think it is. But we saw in the Community Shield there, people started to go for Foden. Oh, Foden benched. De Bruyne obviously came on, did well. Foden then came on and changed the game a little bit when he came on as well. Alvarez did play. We had Stones who played and obviously did okay as well. All these players that we're thinking, God, it just reminded everybody that there is always a risk going with City players. Is it just Haaland we should be going with, or do you think they're worth the risk, Rich?
Yeah, I'm completely put off Foden now.
Yeah.
Completely off of that. I mean, I was pretty off of it anyway, but I think I definitely want a defender or Edison.
Yeah.
I'm just deciding which. I think I've got Diaz in my team at the moment, but part of the reason I had him was because there were some rumours. Again, keep mentioning rumours, and it turned out to not be true that Stones was injured. So I think that's the decision for me, is between Stone, Diaz, and Edison. You could even potentially look at a double up. There just seems to be so many good defenders. So then it would probably be Edison and one City defender. Yeah,
nice. What about you, Seb?
I mean, yeah, Edison is looking worryingly tempting. It's just the minutes. Someone, a couple of people tweeted this the other day, actually, but so I won't take credit for this. But it's the old, I won't pick Edison because doesn't keep enough clean sheets or always lets one in at 5.5 million. But I will pick John Stones at 5.5 million because he plays for the best defence in the country. So I mean, obviously there's a little more to it than that. There's substitutes in either position. But I think for those minutes, just for that access to those clean sheet points, Edison is very tempting. I'd be tempted by John Stones over Diaz because at that point, I guess I would sacrifice a few minutes. Maybe Stones is benched 1 in 5 for that faint chance of some sort of attacking return. Although obviously Diaz from corners should be suitably dangerous as well. I definitely leave the left side alone because they've just signed Josko Vardiel, or will be signing him. Mm-hmm. He is left-footed. He is a centre back, can play left back as well.
He's 5 mil in the game as well.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
I didn't even know that. Beautiful. Yeah. So actually, that would, if he started looking like nailing down the left side, that would be very tempting. Yeah. But he's obviously very young, and he's played brilliantly, but he is young. I'd imagine there'll be some time to acclimatise there. But he could be a nice option. But what he probably does is takes away minutes from those left side options, which obviously includes Akanji, although he's right-footed, good with his left playing. But so that left centre-back role, and Nathan Ake, unfortunately, who was a good one for us last season. So I think that leaves us with midfielders. And as Rich said, or as you said, sorry, I forgot, clearly listening. Foden was attractive to us and then didn't play, which I don't think that could have really been a surprise. It always feels like hope, doesn't it? We hope he'll play that 8. Hope he'll play on the right. We know they're maybe in for a right winger. Cole Palmer scored a goal. Yeah. Looks like that could well be a position he could deputise in. So is Foden just competing for that 8 position? He's probably not taking the left wing off Grealish other than rotation. A bit like that Brighton conversation. It feels like, are we just trying to get a slice of the Man City pie, but every slice isn't quite tasty enough? I think Haaland and someone from the defence, and I'll come back to Edison again because I don't know, I like pain.
Yeah.
I can't believe the pricing of Guardiola, by the way.
Yeah, I know, 5 mil. I don't really get that.
It seems ridiculous. It's just a shame he signed so late. I mean, I remember him scoring in the World Cup. I think it was only the 3rd place playoff.
Yeah.
To be fair, but
he's a footy man legend as well.
It seems like an absolute bargain, unless he's going to be one of these signings that has to wait for the second year under Pep. But
interesting as well. I'll just say before we move off this one, you mentioned there about obviously Edison minutes, but we saw in the Community Shield with these extra minutes being added on now, they got a 100th minute clean sheet wipeout, didn't they? Would you rather own a defender that maybe goes off and banks the clean sheet, or would you rather own Edison because he's going to be,
I feel like this is one of those things where we'll give it more attention than it's worth.
Oh,
there's definitely some sort of marginal difference, but it's probably a rounding error. Like the amount, how big it feels in our mind. Oh my goodness, 5 more minutes on top of the usual 5 more minutes. So it's only 5 minutes, 5% of the match. Yeah, a crucial end, the old tired legs thing. Maybe managers should just train players harder, play for 95 minutes. I think that'll be fine. Maybe, but it's the same for everyone as well. It's not like you can choose.
You have to have a goalie.
But
in
yeah,
FPL,
it's
I mean.
not like you can choose a player who isn't going to have that extra time at the end of the match. So I'll just choose a good one.
There will be a game this season where that happens, and I'll say, "I told you, Seb."
Oh, almost certainly. But predicting that feels dangerous, doesn't it? It's
Oh, yeah,
like
big
Reece
time.
James.
Yeah.
Does Reece James go off on 59 minutes and bag
Yeah.
you 1 point, or does he go off on 61 and bag you like 8 points?
No, he gets
That's
the
the
1
thing.
point. James.
Yeah,
will get the
exactly.
1
But
point, yeah.
so trying to pick a player who like doesn't last the match but lasts long enough feels
Yeah.
like a very risky game.
It makes me worry more about like the 4.0 defenders than the premium ones, if that makes sense.
Interesting.
I feel like they're the teams that are really going to struggle.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, let's have another spin. Here we go. So we've got a few options left still. And it is landing on... I'm going to go back to Rich because he's already mentioned these once today. Chelsea Renaissance. So I swear a couple of weeks ago, everybody was saying, no, not touching Chelsea. We have no idea what they're going to be like. Not going to touch them. Don't see the point. Now, all of a sudden, they're starting to creep in. And Kunku looks like he could be out for a little while. Nothing officially confirmed, but he could be out for longer than we expect. Jackson's obviously coming. He's done okay. We've got James and Chilwell, who everybody's very, very high on as well. We've got players like Colwill. Rich, if you had to pick your Chelsea boys that you would go with, who would you be picking and how confident are you starting with them from game week 1?
I mean, I think you've got to avoid Kepa now. So for me, and a lot of this is because they're actually fit at the moment and they've stayed fit, especially Chilwell, who's played a few more preseason games. So Chilwell, James, and then monitoring Colwill. So it's the defenders, really. I was hoping that Sterling would become an attractive option, but I've just been reading, like, Chelsea fans are really upset and angry with Sterling. I don't know if it's just a social media thing. I know sometimes City fans were frustrated with him. I remember the Champions League final the year before last. I think that was when he started. And, City fans were outraged that he started. So he does seem to be a target. And he's had it with England fans as well.
Yeah.
So I was hoping Sterling would become a thing. But so, yeah, it's just the defenders for me at the moment. Obviously Nkuku's out. I don't really know what to expect from them attacking. And to be honest, I don't know if they're going to keep a lot of clean sheets, but the fixtures do look good.
Yeah.
And with James and Chilwell in particular, we know what to expect from them. They've been in the Premier League for multiple years. They only played, I think, 14 and 15 games last season. Stats still look very, very good. Chilwell actually looks, in small samples, a lot more attacking than James at the moment, which surprises me.
I heard someone mentioning the other day saying that thing is with those fullbacks, with those wing backs in James and Chilwell, who's more likely to tuck in and become a right or left centre back? And obviously James has done it before, hasn't he? He's done that tucking in and been that right centre back. Whereas Chilwell, I can't see him doing that role. So I suppose they're doing that whole, what every team seems to be doing at the moment is 3 of them tuck in and the other one bombs forward. And obviously it just kind of naturally becomes Chilwell, I think. But obviously James, we've seen it before for so long that he is exceptionally good at doing it as well, isn't he?
I mean, we only got to see in the last friendly, because funnily enough, Chelsea's friendlies all ended quite early and they've only got a behind closed doors thing now. So we only got to see, I think it was 45 minutes of them together. And yeah, Chilwell looked, based on heat maps, based on that 45 minutes, a lot more attacking than James.
Yeah.
I mean, but then if you remove Chilwell from like a heat map, James is still quite far forward, just not as far forward, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I still think his natural thing is going to be to attack. I just like the thought of having both. And if you can't, sometimes if you can't decide, just have both. A bit like with Rashford and Bruno.
Well, Seb, Richard just said there about having both. Is there an option of having Colwill here? Because people seem to be very, very confident that he's going to be starting in that defence to start the season. And also, I just want to say, we messaged each other not that long ago, and I said, I haven't got Chilwell in at the moment. And your reply to me was, rectify that. So you obviously seem very confident to start with him this season.
Yeah, cocky Seb on WhatsApp is not the same Seb on stream.
Private message, Andy.
Yeah, I'll show you.
Go for it. I'm Colwell. There we go. I've already gone to Chilwell. It's in my head. I feel it's a value thing, right? Which is entirely fair. You can then bench him if you need to. I think it's probably a temporary thing because while you may hope he wins that position when injuries have subsided or if just, rotation comes in, whatever it is, I think that's a hope rather than a guarantee. James, Chilwell feels safer, massive safer for James, that is. But then, of course, if you did end up benching a Chelsea asset or having someone who's a bit of a rotation rower, you are blocking yourself out of another Chelsea asset because of the pricing, because they don't have European football, because they've got a good manager and are probably playing good football, at least for an FPL side, and they could finish fifth and still deliver some good points. I think we're going to want access to a lot of their players throughout the season. That being Nkunku when he's fit, I'm excited to own him at some point. Jackson now maybe is even a better option because even if they do sign someone else, there's another player that needs to play that 10-9 or whatever it is forward roles. As Rich said, Sterling probably not available to us. We'll see about Mudryk. So then I'm looking at the fullbacks and probably just edge Chilwell as for all the reasons you mentioned. But I will very happily have James as well. And just to add on to Rich's point about those two, whereas Chilwell does look like he's further forward, and a brilliant observation that if you took Chilwell out, you'd just be excited about James being quite advanced probably. But I would say that a lot of Chilwell's points will come from, or more of his points will come from goals, whereas James's will probably come from assists. And of course, goals are worth more, so absolutely. But if we're looking at heat maps and thinking one of these players needs to score and one of these needs to assist, well, then being slightly asymmetrical in terms of how far advanced they are makes a lot of sense, right? Reece James probably is going to be a little bit deeper. Yes, because of his qualities on the ball, but if he's the one providing the assists, I'm less worried about him needing to get into that box. Whereas Chilwell, if the only thing I'm getting from him is goals, and he's the deeper of the two, I'd be more worried than I would be, say, proportionally for James.
Yeah. So, Seb, before we move on to the next one then, who is your Chelsea player you'd want to start with from Game Week 1?
I have two. But
who's
I
the
will
one?
go Chilwell.
Chilwell?
Very boring. Everyone's got that.
Yeah, Chilwell as well.
Chilwell.
Just
Nice.
because he's had more preseason minutes. And like Seb said, he's more likely to score based on what we've seen.
Yeah, lovely stuff. Right, moving on. Here we go. Next spin on the spinner. I love this, boys. Honestly, I can't describe my joy watching this go around. We got 5 left. And it is surprising Spurs. So, I am actually really surprised how Spurs are starting to creep into drafts. Obviously, Kane is starting to creep into drafts now. Maddison is starting to creep into drafts quite a bit. I've even seen 1 or 2 Sons in teams as well. Now, this is coming from kind of a little bit of hype coming in from pre-season where people are saying that Postecoglou's done very well and people are really liking his style of play and that they are being as attacking as we're expecting them to be as well. Seb, just talk me through, is any of those Spurs players crept into your team, and should they be?
Personally, no, not yet. But I think it's entirely valid to be considering them, especially ones that are attractively priced relative to other assets in similar positions. So, for example, Maddison in just that whole mid-price midfield conversation. We've mentioned Kane already. There's also Pedro Porro at the back, who could well be an option, but we seem to have a lot at that price as well. I think it makes sense. I don't currently have any. But you know how we've said, obviously, preseason is not for judging performance or not for going, this player scored this goals and this player's by this. It should be about trying to assess team structure and taking a guess at minutes, who looks like they're nailing down positions, who's going to play where. If we were going to make an exception to that, it is when a new manager comes in with a team that have potentially underperformed in the past. Because then, yes, we're looking for all those other things, but we're maybe looking for, does this translate into a performance, and especially an FPL relevant performance? If we had any other data, competitive data, we'd much rather go on that, but we don't. So I think it's fair to just say, well, has he come in and got the players playing any kind of football that looks constructive for FPL? I think the answer is yes. We don't want to get too carried away, but it does open up the possibility of putting them on those watch lists and having a look for later. Starting with it could be fine. I know some of those fixtures are kind, but if I was going to start with someone, I'd probably want to go like all in and do a Kane or a Son if you thought Son was going to be, main man. Going Maddison, and you'll excuse me for saying this, maybe feels a bit middling. It feels like just dipping your toe in that water, but not really going for it. If you think Spurs are brilliant, if you think the fixtures are good, then go for where the points are going to come from. Maybe don't half-arse it with Maddison. That feels more like I could use that money in someone who is on penalties at Brentford or something like that,
I like it because, Rich, I think that Maddison could be going under the radar quite a bit. He seems to be playing that second striker slot just behind Kane, and he looked very good the other day. He got a few assists. Do you see, because at 7.5 million, I think that's quite kindly priced for him. Do you feel like Maddison could be entering your drafts?
No. I mean, to be honest,
yeah, fair.
I think a lot of these.
Thanks, Rich. After Andy just absolutely put me down there.
Which, that's
hey,
right.
if he's looking in a good position, absolutely fair enough. Listen to Andy, not me.
I mean, he's one I'm gonna keep an eye on, but I think with Spurs, like I mentioned earlier, the good fixtures start about game week 3. So you've got Bournemouth, Burnley, Sheffield United. Two of those are away though, so I don't really fancy the defenders. I know Udogie is 4.5, and it looks like he's going to be starting, but yeah, I don't really fancy the defenders there. So I'm definitely going to keep an eye on players like Maddison, because they could well come into the conversation after a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Especially if we lose Rashford or Bruno for any reason.
Exactly.
So I'll be keeping an eye on them. But there's so many midfielders I like. I mean, Maddison's, I don't think he's anywhere near the five I prefer the most at the moment, especially when you take into account value as well.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there in terms of Maddison. To me, doesn't seem like somebody we start with. He seems like somebody we downgrade down to in game week 3 or 4 to free up those funds to upgrade somebody else, because we're all going to be saving that transfer in game week 2 as much as possible. And then it seems like he's that player we can get to with lovely fixtures, and we can also see what he's been like, because it all looks good in pre-season, but as soon as you get into the season, it could be like, whoa, this is not working, or Maddison's not working in that system, whatever it is. So I think that's perfect what you said there, personally. Right.
He's a player that can go missing. I mean, he's a very, very talented player, but we've seen it before. He's gone on incredible streaks of scoring low XG goals.
Yeah.
But then he's also gone missing for weeks on end as well. So
he did. I mean, I think it was just before Christmas. There was a point where I owned him, and he was absolutely amazing for a bit. I think he scored, I can't remember which game it was, but he scored a free kick and he got 2 goals and assist in that game,
I remember that vividly.
It was absolutely brilliant, and he can do that, like you said. But it'd be interesting to see if Kane stays. I think that's massive for him. I think he could be a really good person to go to.
If I went Maddison over Martinelli, for example, and Arsenal destroy Forest, I would only have myself to blame. Unless Maddison does something as well away at Brentford.
Well, that's the thing, for me, because maybe moving down to Pedro, it's not thinking about having him instead of those Arsenal or Man United ones. It's instead of having the 6.5 midfielder. So it's instead of having an Mbumo, Matoma, Eze, whatever it is.
He will be on penalties.
Start with a Maddison.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's exactly it. But it's... Yeah. And I don't see the benefit at the moment because of the fixtures, whereas I think from game week 3 onwards, that's where it could be, a good thing to go to, maybe. Or game week 4 if...
You said he's playing off Kane as well. What if Kane does just suddenly leave?
Yeah, I know. And then he's playing off Richarlison. It's not quite
exactly
the same. Yeah. But
I mean, in 3 weeks' time, 4 weeks' time, when the transfer window closes, if we've had time to assess that Maddison is more central to how Spurs are going, that invalidates what I said before, right? If you then want to get on Spurs, Maddison maybe is a tastier pick than Son, because you will get a greater share of that attacking play, which is entirely fair enough. I think we are very, very comfortable giving ourselves a little bit of time to assess that, both seeing if Kane stays and seeing if that structural shape does hold up, and Maddison is a part of it.
Yeah, lovely. Right, next spin. Here we go. We've only got 4 left, boys. We're doing all right. 4 left. And one of them is going to be really quick anyway. So here we go. Myriad of Arsenal mids. So we've got, I'm not going to lie, the amount, I think I've had almost every Arsenal midfielder in my team at some point this pre-season. So we've got Saka, who seems to be a lock in pretty much every team. We've got Odegaard, we've got Havertz, we've got Martinelli, and we've got Trossard that's starting to come into teams as well. So 5 midfielders we can pick from. Nobody's picking all 5 because you can't. You can only have 3. I have seen 3 in a few drafts, but I've seen at least 2 in pretty much every draft. Now, Rich, if I go to you first, Arsenal midfielders, who are your 2? If we forget Saka for a second, because he seems to be in pretty much everybody's, who is your second Arsenal midfielder of choice?
Oh, midfielder?
Yeah, so forget about
defence. Forget Gabriel.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. But who would be your second midfielder of choice?
Probably Martinelli, although I know there's a lot to digest with what happened yesterday. I would still go Martinelli over Odegaard. Because of the saving. So, yeah, Martinelli for me.
Yeah. Seb?
Feels like last season again, right? Have Saka, and then do you prefer minute surety or the perception that Martinelli is a greater goal threat? But I think we saw last year, was that necessarily always true? Where Odegaard had, just looking here at last year's numbers, 0.29 XG per 90 for Odegaard, 0.30 for Martinelli, so the same. Now, of course, you may judge other factors, positioning, whatever, to see whether you think that is going to continue into the future, but based literally just on looking at last season's numbers, there's nothing in it. So if that's per 90, I'll take the one that gets 90 more often.
Yeah, it's weird,
but
isn't it?
but for 0.5 more.
Yeah.
That is also a very
Yeah.
good point. Yeah, 0.5 more is an interesting conversation.
I've looked an awful lot at Odegaard's heat maps this pre-season to see whether there's been any kind of a change, to see whether he's dropping back deeper. He isn't. He's still playing where he was last season. He's still kind of, in the opposition's half a lot more than he's, dropping back. And obviously Rice will help with that because he'll do a lot of that kind of work anyway. But it's really interesting. I know Seb's just said there, you take the man with the minutes. And that's what worries me the most. It worries me the most that Martinelli could be going off for Trossard all the time. And Trossard's been so effective as well. I mean, Rich, does that worry you at all with Martinelli? Like, that 0.5 does make a massive difference. Because I think everybody would be going for Odegaard if he was the same price as Martinelli. But does that worry you at all?
I mean, when we get to my team at the end, you'll see it does. Because I've actually only got 2 Arsenal players at the moment.
Yeah.
And only one of them is a midfielder. Which I didn't think would happen pre-season, but it's just been, obviously, with Jesus getting injured, I felt like it was more question marks than anything after yesterday.
Yeah.
And the price of them as well. So, yeah, it does worry me.
Yeah. Seb, just before we move off this bit, Havertz and Trossard probably haven't been in a lot of people's drafts, but maybe they should start thinking about them a little bit. I mean, Havertz obviously started the game yesterday. He had 2 quite good chances, I would say. One of them maybe he should have scored. Trossard came on, did score, looked dangerous when he came on. And you talk to a lot of Arsenal fans, and they're saying, why is he not starting more games? Because he's been very good when he's played for us. Should either of those be in there? Because Havertz 7.5, Trossard 7.
The prices are certainly attractive. Havertz, I think, is just bettered by the other options, whether he's playing up front, whether he's playing in midfield. And there's maybe still question marks over long-term into the season if he has been signed for that 8 role where they still have Jorginho and other players, Smith Rowe we saw play. If there are certain matches where Arteta wants to control possession more or do certain things with the ball, it may be Jorginho, Rice and Ødegaard rather than Havertz. Havertz could well be playing up front or on the right in that position. But I think he's probably... Or if he is nailed, we need to see how Arteta approaches different matches. Because I think what Arsenal have done this summer, they're looking into a second goalkeeper in David Raya. They're trying to give themselves more tools to unlock other teams rather than just that same way of playing every week like they did last season, which was very successful. But now if they can switch it up like they did, January, they brought Jorginho in. I think they wanted Rice at that time actually as well, just so he can have different options in matches. So then that comes to Trossard. If Trossard was to take that place off Martinelli, I think that's very attractive. But then do we have the same conversation again, just in reverse, where, well, his minutes aren't assured because Martinelli's ready to come in and take them? We maybe would need an injury or a suspension to see that position nailed. Trossard obviously didn't start up front before Havertz joined. He did before Havertz joined, and now he hasn't when Havertz has joined. And Martinelli can play there too. So maybe that takes away from those. So I kind of come back to the minutes again. Although Rich's point about price is very, very important, because I have made a decision against what I'm probably saying here, literally just for price. So at this point early in the season, when it's as much about trying to fit those jigsaw pieces together in 0.5 increments, than it will be later in the season when we work out how we can gain more value in our team. I think the one thing that could overcome a 49, 51% decision like this is that 0.5 in value.
Nice. So if I had to ask you now then, who would be your second Arsenal mid of choice? So Saka being the first, who's your second mid of choice?
See, I would say Ødegaard, but then I currently have Martinelli based on team. So sorry, that's not really a great answer.
No, it's not. And Rich, what about you?
Yeah, I'd go Martinelli. But again, it's more not because I've got him, but because I know what the team... I've got a team with Martinelli.
Yeah.
So for me, it's just the 0.5. And what Seb was just saying made me realise it's kind of similar to Brighton, but we were kind of spoilt last year that the Arsenal players were so nailed on. We couldn't pick enough of them. They're still really, really cheap, but I guess it's just there's going to be more minutes concerns this year, possibly.
Yeah. I'm on Martinelli. I feel like it's one of those things where I say, if I go for Ødegaard, I'm really hoping he carries on from last year. Whereas Martinelli, there's no reason why he shouldn't be getting those attacking returns because of obviously where he plays. Whereas Ødegaard, I feel like I'm hoping for him to carry on, if that makes sense. And I've got no idea whether he's going to.
Do you feel like we're sort of misunderstanding what Ødegaard is? Because
maybe.
I feel like I feel similarly to you, where I'm like, I need to make sure Ødegaard can carry on doing that. I don't know if there's any indication that he wouldn't. Is it because he's a midfielder? Our view of him as a footballer is more of this creator, maybe a deeper player. But we have a lot of evidence that that's not what he's doing it is what he's doing in Arsenal's system, but he's also playing a role that gets him some really good goal opportunities. And I don't think that has changed.
And I should say as well, a lot of people are trying to make conclusions on the game on Sunday. it's so hard because they're playing the best team in the world at the moment. So they're going to play differently against Man City as they do, in game week 1. So it's really hard to see because obviously he could play further forward, he could play deeper against easier opposition. So it's hard to tell, but you know that he will definitely be playing. That's the difference with Odegaard.
And a potentially dodgy piece of analysis because we know how small sample this is. But there were teams last season where someone who would sit deep, try and put a bit of a block up, were actually the ones where Odegaard got most of his points, if I recall. Please go check that. He scored a couple of long shots, but also got into the box quite a lot. When Arsenal were trying to break a team down with passing and whatnot, I think it's when he arguably did better. So if you were really trying to target poor fixtures, there's an argument that that's where Odegaard got most of his points last year. Might just be anecdotal, might be nothing in it, but might be a tiebreaker.
Yeah, lovely stuff. Right, next one then. We've only got 3 left, boys. Here we go. We've got to be finished. I reckon we got 9 minutes. I reckon we'll be fine. Here we go. So the next one is which 6.5 midfielder? So now we've had pretty much all of pre-season. We've been talking about this pretty much all of pre-season as well. Now you've had all of this information. Who is your favoured 6.5 midfielder? So we've got Matoma, we've got Eze, we've got Mbeumo, we've got someone who I'm forgetting and I should be saying, but I can't remember who it is. Who at the moment, Seb, is your favoured 6.5 midfielder?
Well, I currently have Mbeumo. Penalties, minutes is enough for me. Matoma was very popular. We've kind of covered that. Diaby, Aston Villa. There might be something for him to do there, but we probably are lovely. But we probably want to see a bit from him before we can be sure, or at least want room for an Aston Villa player in our side. There's a few others. Obviously, Kudus coming in at Brighton. We'd probably want to see something there. Eze, I like a lot. Just penalties, if nothing else. Minutes and penalties are such a good way to set a nice floor for yourself in FPL, and always a good place to look for players to start with. And then Cisco as well came up here when I was just looking at that price bracket and good minutes, good points, sorry. But of course, we know that. You're laughing because I said it funny, I'm guessing. Yeah, good.
Thong song.
I'd love to say I was doing it on purpose, but I'm not. I'm just terrible. But yeah, I think minutes are an issue for him as well. So I would probably, in order of some sort of vague preseason preference, go with Mbeumo, then Eze, then Matoma. Punt on Diaby, maybe. There's Andreas as well, if he has penalties at Fulham. Always an option, but $1 million cheaper, I think, 5.5.
Yeah. No, nice. So yours is Mbeumo, Eze, then Matoma. Is that right?
That'd be my top 3, I think, yeah.
Nice. Rich?
Yeah, I mean, I had Matoma in my team. I can't remember if it's last week or the week before.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm just thinking I need to go for a player on penalties. I think my team was getting further and further away from that. They're such a gift to have them. So I think Bumo's the one I've got in my team at the moment. I'm also looking at this thing with Eze and Gibbs White, where I start with Eze for Sheffield United away, go to Gibbs White for Sheffield United at home, and then there's some bench pokery with the rest of my squad. I don't know if I'll do that, but I'm starting to like Gibbs White a lot more. Now that we know he's on penalties, he started upping his minutes in pre-season as well.
Yeah,
he's got a really nice fixture in game week 2, really nice fixture in game week 5.
I like him.
Just that's probably more of a differential one, and I think Mark Sutherns would like that, wouldn't he? But
he would.
Yeah, the thing with Eze is his fixtures aren't that good.
Yeah.
Like obviously the game week 1's incredible away at Sheffield United,
and then game week 2 not so good.
That's the thing. That's why I was then thinking, could you go from Eze to Gibbs White? Obviously, the preference would be to roll, but I think he needs his hat in the ring as well. But for me, and Mbeumo's my favourite. And then it's Eze, Gibbs White. Ooh. I do still like Matoma. The rumours always get to me.
Yeah,
it makes no sense if he goes to City. But would it be shocking if it happened?
No, I mean they're looking for a winger, aren't they? Because obviously Elise's been linked as well. So
exactly,
it feels like they're going to get somebody. But my thoughts on Mbeumo, by the way, Mbeumo's top for me just because of that kind of future proofing as well. Like the fixtures are so nice for quite a while. It just feels like someone like Matoma, it should be over so quick, and then all of a sudden you've got a player that's got tough fixtures. And Eze's the same. I just feel like I'll be looking at Eze each week and going, oh yeah, he's got a tough fixture now. And whereas Mbeumo, it just feels so nice for so long. And I always think if you're kind of struggling which way to go for the player that you're going to be happy to own for a bit longer, if that makes sense. Because if other things go wrong, at least you get to keep playing Mbeumo. So yeah, no, I do agree. I do like the Eze shout. It's just a tricky one. But Gibbs White, I do love that shout for later on. I think that's a really nice one. Right, here we go. Only 2 left. 2 on the spinner left, and we are ending up. Please, yeah, good, because I didn't want to. I didn't want to finish on bench fodder. So bench fodder now. This is the quickest one I would have thought. Thinking about those players at 4 million, 4.5 million, in midfield or defence or up front. Seb, if we start with you, who are those players that you're thinking could get you a few points that are 4 million, 4.5 million?
So I have a bench that currently has 2 of those minimum price players and then a defender. I think a lot of people have that set up. We'll see it more in a minute. So for me, West Ham forward makes a lot of sense. And then one of those 4.0 defenders from Sheffield United, Burnley, Luton. I've got Baldock at the moment. I know there's maybe more minutes concerns around him, but maybe more attacking potential. Also, third bench, very happy to sit there. And obviously, goalkeeper. We all have the exact same body part from West Ham, I think, don't we?
Well, is that a good idea? Because if he's that highly owned and then he doesn't do anything, people are going to be getting rid of him and he's going to be like 3.9 million.
We discussed this before, didn't we? I don't know if it's as much of a risk because of how it works. I don't know if it's that much of a risk. Yeah, maybe, but then it's only 3.9 if you need to sell. Just keep him all season. It's fine.
Also,
True.
Turner's just gone to
Forest,
hasn't he?
Still looking at Henderson though, apparently. So
yeah,
but if that's backup, that's fine. But I don't know if
he might have a better
that
route than Areola, and I doubt his ownership's going to top Areola's now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that then fine.
So Rich, are you the same? Are you thinking Kabore, Baldock, Bayer, Mbamba?
I've gone off all the 4.0 defenders.
Have
the
you?
reason for that is the ones I actually like, the blank in Game Week 2.
Yeah.
And obviously I think most teams are going to have a 4.5 striker who's not going to play.
Yeah.
People are then looking at Pedro as the second striker, which I feel could be forcing you into a 4-5-1. So I really like the 4.5 defenders now, even as fifth defender.
Yeah.
The trouble I'm having is something like Botman against Colwill, for example.
Yeah.
Or both. But yeah,
Torres.
I've gone off the 4.0s just because I think we're going lighter and lighter. I say we, like everyone's got the same team.
Yeah.
But, people are going lighter and lighter on the strikers. Jesus and Watkins don't seem to be as popular as they were.
Mm-hmm.
Pedro is a risk. And I think if you're going Pedro, Haaland and Fodder, I would want my fifth defender to actually be decent and actually to play in Game Week 2.
Yeah.
I understand. And I think that's why people are going Baldock. But then I've just got this feeling Sheffield United not really done much in the summer. I think they could be in for a long season.
Yeah, lost their talisman as well, didn't they?
Has he actually gone? Was that Berg?
No, and Dye.
And Dye went as well, yeah.
But Sander Berg's supposed to be going as well, isn't he?
Yeah, that was the thing I saw earlier, so I wasn't sure if that actually happened.
Yeah, I have to wait and see. But no, it's interesting. I like it. I'm on Kabore at the moment just because I don't think I'm going to have to play him in Game Week 2. Hopefully not. And then obviously they've got a double at some point, haven't they? So it's fun to have him, I guess. But right, last one. I'm going to spin it anyway because it's Rich's one. Here we go, and it is going to land on Onana. What's my name? And this is the goalkeeper one. So Onana. I mean, it was unbelievable. He got added to the game and his just ownership just increased. I think he's in almost 30% of teams now. I went through a stage of all of a sudden looking at it and thinking, I don't see a lot of clean sheets for Man United in those first 5 fixtures, maybe 2. And I'm looking at it and thinking, well, usually a 4.5 million keeper is the way to go, but we've got to choose which one because obviously we never know until the season really starts. So is Onana the best play, Rich? Or should we be going for another goalkeeper? And people in the chat are going mad because they know you love goalkeepers.
I do love goalkeepers, although it got kind of forced upon me. I think it got so hyped because the game got launched. Then people were speculating over what his price would be, and they were like, if he's 5.0, he's a bargain. And then the second he got added to the game, everyone was adding him to the team. I didn't quite get it then. It just felt like a big hype because there wasn't much going on.
Yeah.
So, well, I think he's all right. I'd rather have rotating goalkeepers or pay the extra 0.5 for Edison.
Yeah.
That's just me. I mean, I've seen arguments for him. Like, he's going to be good with bonus points. But is he going to keep any clean sheets? And I already know what Seb's going to say on this. I think Seb covered it quite well last week, to be fair. So for me, it's no.
To be fair, I think Seb said it quite well. I know it's obviously different because Onana's got a bit better passing range than De Gea did. But if De Gea was 5 million, would we be all going De Gea? And I think Seb said last time, I don't think we would. But Seb, how are you feeling about the goalkeepers now? And if you're not on Onana, who are you going for?
I mean, yeah, you've covered it nicely there. I think Onana has become a very popular pick, and I think he's a good pick, but I don't think he's good enough to justify the level of interest in him. I think he will probably disappoint a few people, even if he still does really well. As you just said there, right? He's basically, in FPL terms, going to be De Gea. In real life, he could be amazing. He could completely change Man United's build-up. But this defense was 8th, 9th in terms of XGC last year. Yes, I know they kept the most clean sheets, but that either means De Gea got a bunch of his points from saves, which either you want Man United's defense to get better, so Onana will get fewer saves, or you want it to stay the same and hope that Onana is as good a shot stopper and maybe as lucky a shot stopper as De Gea, or just strikers are unlucky against them, whatever the reason was. Terrible. It's because Martinez was shouting at them and he put them off.
Exactly.
But for whatever the reason is, you're kind of obviously hoping that once again the numbers are wrong about Manchester United's output in real life, and that could well be the case. That's absolutely fine. But I can't think of a reason just to justify that myself, so I'm not gonna try and justify it. For example, 51.18 was Man United's XGC last year. 51.76 was Brentford. Go for the Brentford goalkeeper for 1 million less and probably concede more shots as well.
0.5
if you want those saves. Is it, sorry, 0.5? Oh, there you go. See, it is a good price. Yeah. But 0.5 less, I think that's a good shout. And I also think, and I'll mention him later, but there's probably a 4.5 goalkeeper that we may all end up looking at sooner rather than later.
Yeah, lovely stuff. So we're all kind of cooling from Onana then.
Oh, that's a question.
I was never that hot. Don't put yourself down, Rich. What are you talking about? Right, lovely stuff. In the chat, that is our dilemma spinner. Let us know if you liked it tonight. That was all 10 dilemmas. We're going to go on to the drafts now. Please make sure as well, we've got almost 850 people in the chat. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Make sure you like the stream for us. That will really, really help us. And make sure everybody else sees this as well. So, Seb, we're going to be going on to your draft first. So here it is. Oh no. You know what I've done, don't you? I haven't actually put the drafts in. I haven't actually put the drafts in. I haven't put the actual pictures in. I saved them and forgot to put them in. So, Seb, just talk us through your draft, please.
So I can just lie to everyone now. Change it all
you can.
To be optimal. My draft then, as I sent you earlier, is a 3-5-2, but with an expensive defender on the bench. It is Ederson in goal, which maybe answers your goalkeeper question. I'd also very happily have a City defender and rejig that to be a cheaper goalkeeper. Whatever, we'll see what happens.
Then have. I'll put it in.
Oh, nice, mate. Okay. Nice. There you go. You can see that then. So then I would have James and Chilwell. One of them starts that first match. One of them gets benched. Maybe the other way around to what I've got here. And then they play going forward. They have Gabriel and Estupiñán next to them in the defence for the first week. I then have a midfield, which I'm guessing a lot of people have, which is Rashford, Saka, Bruno, and Mbumo. And then Martinelli here for price reasons, although I did say I mentioned Odegaard. Either is fine, fair enough. Haaland captain, obviously, although Saka vice captain, and I know there's some shouts for going Saka. I'll make that decision closer to the time, I think. And then João Pedro up front next to Haaland at the moment for 5.5. I think it's a nice early pick. It's a good value pick. It allows some things elsewhere. For example, a better defence. The plan going forward, this has 1 million in the bank, would be able to upgrade João Pedro to even a 7.5 at one point by also downgrading Estupiñán at the same time those fixtures turn, for example, to a 4.0 or something. And then Nkunku, I know he's out for a couple of months now. Yeah. Maybe it would have been my target at 7.5. Maybe there's Darwin if those minutes look there. Or there's just other options around the team. That's one of the reasons I wanted Martinelli cheaper, to access that different price bracket. The rest of the bench then is just cheap with Areola, Mbama and Bodok.
Yeah, lovely stuff. So I'm assuming you listened to Rich on the pod tonight and you've completely changed around your team to have double Chelsea defence. Is that right?
Well, I will say that, yes. The screenshot I just sent you now, I had Onana in goal. I had Luke Shaw, but Rich was right and I've got James and Joel. No, I like those two as a double up. I think the main reason I've done it is I hate myself and want to do badly, but also... I mean, it's hard to resist, isn't it? Maybe I'm being silly, but I think I would want to get on them, or at least one of them in Game Week 3. So it feels like trying to bank that transfer and just start now, but with enough strength around as well to make sure that I can withstand a Liverpool match, for example, I think is a decent way to go. If you want both of them in 2 or 3 weeks' time, it's a good idea to have both now, I think, or don't have both of them in a couple of weeks' time.
I really, really worry that we're expecting both James and Chilwell to be fit in game week 3.
Oh, now of course, but I have transfers before then. That is a completely valid valid concern. But I can get rid of Reece James. That's fine. There's loads of players around that price bracket. I can go cheaper. I can go slightly more expensive with 1 million in the bank. I can lose my bottle and not do this on Friday night. But I don't think James getting injured, other than for the 1 week where he gives me 1 point, is as much a concern as it needs to be. Also, with Nkunku not there, I want him to take a penalty.
There's really good exit routes for James and Chilwell, either one or two, because we're going to want Trippier. He's only 1 million more. After a few weeks, we're probably going to want players like Botman. I mean, I'll be looking at Newcastle defenders quite early into the season. I think a lot of us will be. So if James gets injured, it's not the end of the world. If you can't afford Trippier, you could just go Share or something as well.
I looked at it earlier. I was thinking, do you know what I could do? I could just start with Trent and then go down to James or Chilwell in game week 3. So I've got someone for game week 2. And I was like, no, it's an extra 2.5 million to get up to Trent.
It's a big difference.
It's such a massive difference. And if I can find 2.5, I might as well just try and get back up to Salah, if that makes sense.
Or you can go Watkins over Pedro with that kind of money.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was interesting. But lovely draft there, Seb. I think the Edison, James, Chilwell triple up there will be a big differential for you going into game week 3. So that's nice. If you do it, and I'm with you at Fest on Friday, so I'm going to make sure you do it.
I know it's just going to go. We're going to make some very bad decisions, aren't we?
Yeah.
It seems like a terrible idea having an event when you have to lock your teams in. I hope they're not selling alcohol.
No, definitely not. Flappy, I'm just bringing yours up on the screen. Look how quick that was there. There you go. It's now up on the screen now. Talk us through your draft.
I mean, it's not too different to Seb's. I can't see it on the screen. It's come up with a blank screen, so I'm just going to load my team up.
No, that's fine. It will be on there in a minute. Don't worry.
Yeah. Oh, there it is. There it is. So, I mean, it's not too different to Seb's. I've got Steele in goal. So it's the Steele and Pickford. So rotating keepers. Again, I need to look at a bit more with the news with Turner. Do I risk going for him? I don't think I'll be brave enough to just go for Pickford. I definitely wouldn't be brave enough to just go for Steele. So I like the option of rotating keepers. It's just finding the best one. And again, it's the same price as Onana. Then in defence, I've got Estepinian, Ruben Dias, who could be Stones, and Gabriel. Then defenders on the bench, I've got Chilwell and Colwill. So I did have Chilwell and James. The thing is, I guess with James, I can delay the decision for a couple of weeks because I guess Estepinian's almost certainly going to leave after a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Well, not definitely, but pretty likely. And then I can go for the third Chelsea defender if James is still fit.
Mm-hmm.
There is a world where I could just start with Chilwell and James, like Seb's looking at. So I'm weighing that up. Or Colwill could be Botman, because like I said, we're going to want Newcastle defenders a few weeks in. So then I could have Botman ready to get Trippier. I've got double Newcastle.
Yeah, nice.
Then midfielders, I've got Mbemo and Eze. Again, those 6.5s are kind of interchangeable. Saka, Rashford, and Bruno. Up top, I've got Haaland and Watkins. Yeah. So I guess my only real dilemma is if I go for Pedro over Watkins, I've then got a load of extra money. Do I then do what Seb does and get in Edison and then upgrade Colwill to James? If I look to go for Salah, I'd have to downgrade probably the backup goalkeeper, downgrade Watkins to Pedro, and then I'd have to sacrifice probably Rashford to do that, and maybe even a bench player.
Yeah.
So the team can get very quickly to just like Seb's team.
Yeah.
If I decide to go for Pedro over Watkins, for example.
I genuinely, I'm calling this now. I cannot see you starting with Colwill. I think we're going to go with James. I think you're going to, because I know how much you love owning James as well. It's just whether you can own.
Join me.
Yeah.
The thing is, I wouldn't play him for the first two game weeks.
I was just about to say that. Yeah, that's the only thing.
It kind of feels like one that can wait.
Yeah.
So I guess that's interesting because I've said, if I do bench one of my Chelsea defenders for the first couple of weeks or just first week, I think I'd rather do that than have a transfer booked to make that move. But I also think the opposite is entirely valid, where you'd rather have something working in your team for those first 2 weeks and then make the move. And I guess you don't open yourself up to the issue of like, oh no, James or Chilwell have got injured and therefore, well, you just don't have to make the move, do you? So I think either works.
I could just see it now, though. Us looking at your team, Game Week 2 stream, when we're looking at Game Week 3, and Seb's got James and Chilwell in his team. and we're both going, oh no. But then we're both cheering because they're both yellow flagged.
But then I might have James Chilwell and Colwill as well.
Yeah, that's true.
And also with Nkunku being, the rumour was he's injured for 2 months, but I don't think that's been confirmed by anyone 100% credible.
Yeah.
But that kind of takes a worry away from me as well. If I go for the triple defence, I'm not missing out on Nkunku. Maybe Jackson becomes a thing, maybe Sterling becomes a thing, but
that's the one thing. Maybe that Pedro position for me can become Jackson. If Nkunku is out for a while, I think that makes Jackson even more attractive. Maybe not if Nkunku is going to be, a big part of that team. Maybe the team is worse overall. But I like that idea of being able to add a forward to that double defence and having access to quite a nicely priced, good team with some decent fixtures.
And that's the advantage of starting with the good two, as in starting with the fullbacks, because then you can just bring in the third defender. If suddenly I want to bring in Jackson or Sterling, for example, I'm kind of a little bit stuck, as in, do I just stick with Colwill? So maybe Colwill becomes Botman and I only start with one Chelsea.
Also, this is one of the reasons I've got Edison. Like, I know that's obviously a bit of a meme and everything, but for me, that point area about if Stones keeps a clean sheet, then so does Edison, probably, you hope. So fine. I do really like Stones, but if I go Stones, then am I losing a Gabriel? I have no interest in losing Gabriel. Am I losing one of my two Chelsea defenders? Well, I quite like both of them. Maybe it's the Brighton defender. Maybe therefore I then go a Brighton goalkeeper. That might well be a better combination, and it's what I had at some point. But I think that would be the only sort of compromise I would make there.
Yeah. So I've got my team up on the screen now. Thank you, boys. So professional there, talking while I was quickly getting the picture up again. So at the moment, I've got Pickford in goal. Then I've got Stones, Gabriel, Estupiñán at the back. I've got Martinelli, Rashford, and Mbeumo, Bruno Fernandes, and Saka in the middle, with Haaland and Pedro up top. I've then got Areola, Chilwell, Baldock, and Mubama up top. This is with 2 million in the bank as well. So this is quite a lot in the bank. It's where I use that extra 2 million. I could easily just go Pickford to Onana, but that would be more of a kind of shielding move as opposed to how I expect them to do. Or I could do the same as you boys have been doing, kind of upgrade Baldock to someone like Colwill or to someone else that I want as a 4.5 million.
Or James.
Or it could be James. The other thing, and I've never, ever thought about doing this before, is just going in with 1.5 in the bank and then being able to move up Pedro after those first 3 game weeks easily to someone like a Watkins, or a Jackson, whatever it is, because that could easily happen as well. I've never gone into a season with potentially that much money in the bank and being that happy with the team. And I'm really happy with this team in general. I could move up Pickford, I could move up Baldock and use a 0.5 and just go in with 1.5. And I'd never thought I'd be happy doing it, but it doesn't look that bad.
Would you go Odegaard if you've got that much money in the bank? Or are you happier with Martinelli?
I have thought about that. I have thought about doing Martinelli to Odegaard as well. But like I said before, I just feel like I would be hoping that Odegaard carries on, whereas I'm expecting Martinelli to get those attacking opportunities. But it's the minutes that obviously worry me. So I've got a few options here. I've got money loose everywhere.
At the risk of just making this the draft I showed, you could also upgrade Pickford to like an Edison, and so I think when you want to go Pedro to a more expensive striker might also be the same moment you want to move down your Brighton defender. So doing those two in tandem, bit of some value swap, does make some sense. But obviously that's a couple of transfers versus hoping that less happens to your team and you don't need 2 transfers.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like this team, I really like it. I like the idea of keeping money in the bank. I feel like your setup here, Pedro will become benchable for your team. You're basically setting up a 4-5-1.
Oh yeah, no, that's exactly it. But the thing that I love about Pedro is he is now my Brighton boy, whereas I needed Matoma. I could not decide between Mbeumo and Matoma. I don't have to worry about that now if I got Pedro and I've got the Brighton player that's on pens that will get minutes, whether he gets 90 every week, which he definitely won't because of everything they've got in attack. But then I've got Chilwell. So it meant that I could get Chilwell back in because I was struggling to get him in as well. So it means that, like you said, after 3 weeks, Pedro's probably going to be benchable. I can play Chilwell anyway. I'm kind of loving life after that. And then obviously I've got 2 transfers to use in game week 3 anyway. So yeah, I do really like it. And I think I could potentially move Martinelli up to Odegaard or move Baldock up to Colwill and then have those 2 Chelsea boys there ready and then have 1.5 in the bank going into the season, which seems absolutely crazy, but it does look quite good. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. The other thing is whether I keep that kind of money in the bank for potentially getting in a Liverpool player in game week 2. But the two I want, I can't get to, which is Salah and Trent. It's whether I move to one of those midfielders. But I don't know. We'll see. There's a lot of options there, but I do quite like the team, if I'm perfectly honest. So we'll see what happens.
Our teams are quite similar, aren't they?
They are.
Very.
But they're less similar than when we all texted each other last week and we all had pretty much the exact same team. So there are some differences now, which is good.
I don't know. There's less and less. We've all
Stop
got
it, Rich.
Pickford now.
They're different.
Oh, no, we haven't. No, we haven't, actually. Sorry, Seb's got Edison.
Yeah.
But we've both got Pickford now, Andy.
I know. I like Pickford. I liked him at the beginning. And then I was embarrassed to say I liked him. And now I'm like, no, I like him.
Embarrassed.
Anyway, let's move on to some predictions. We're going to make this bit really quick here, lads. So this is basically our predictions for the season. We've got over 1,000 people in the chat now, by the way. Thank you so much for joining us. Make sure you like the stream if you're liking what you're seeing. Moving on to our predictions for the year. So we're going to do over and under throughout the season. But for this one here, we did our over and under on players last week. So we've gone predictions this week. So I'm going to ask the boys here, and someone will keep track of this in the chat. I'm sure they will, and show us up at the end. Question 1. Which player owned by few now will be owned by lots later? So Seb, who are you going to go for? A player that's really lowly owned that's going to be owned by lots of players later on in the season.
So I cheated earlier and said Nkunku, because he's only 11% now, and it will go down when the injury is confirmed.
Oh.
But to give you a real answer, this is the goalkeeper I was talking about, Johnston. He's 1.4%. He's 4.5 million. We always end up with a 4.5 million goalkeeper, so I've gambled that will be Johnston.
Nice. Rich?
Right, so I found a player who's only 0.2% owned.
Ooh.
And I think he's going to be very popular. Tony.
Oh, okay.
That's cheating more than my Nkunku one.
Okay. Christ. Okay, no, that's fine. I see where we're going with these. Well, I've gone for a United boy,
Tactical.
5 million midfielder. I've gone for Garnacho. I feel like people are going to be very surprised. I think he's going to start the season as well. I think he's going to be starting game week 1. I think over Sancho. So I think Garnacho is going to play. I think it's going to be Garnacho, Rashford, and Anthony. The front three. So I think Garnacho could start to come into quite a few teams. I think he's going to have a good season as well. So I'm going to go with Garnacho. I don't know what he's owned by. It's going to be something ridiculously low. So that's who I'm going for. Number 2, which highly owned player will flop hard? Get your minds out the gutter. Who do you think, Seb?
Onana at 24.9%. Flop relative to expectations.
Nice. Rich?
I can't have Areola here, can I?
No,
I thought not. No, do you know what? This is really, really difficult. I do have a player written down, but I should say most of the players that are, you used to sort by player selected, and there'd be some rogue ones.
Yeah.
Seasons gone by. There'd be your Kantes and stuff. All the players look very, very good.
Kante, yeah.
I'm going to go Matoma. I don't really have much to base that on. I just wonder to mention these rumours again that probably won't be true after I've mentioned it 3 times. I'm going to go Matoma. There's no logic. But Haaland's top, Saka, Estepinian, Rashford, Trippier, Stones. I don't think any of them flop. So
allow me to add some credence then to the Matoma shout. If it's relative to ownership, 37.7%, over a third of the people playing the game own Matoma. That's probably slightly too many. Doesn't mean he would be terrible, but I think he will fall from there. And just want to fill in you were looking through the lists and who's probably too highly owned. The good example from years ago was always Phil Neville, when he was like a defender and played midfield and then he was made a midfielder. Yeah. And like everyone, like he was like 50%, but that's because his position was weird. McAllister, he's 13.8%. Loved him at Brighton, but he is not getting penalties at Liverpool. And unless he's going to be playing like a pretty advanced 10, I don't think there's going to be that much in it for him, unfortunately. So if you're going Liverpool midfielder, it'll almost never be him. So 13.8 feels like far too high.
Yeah. You almost say Liverpool with a Scouse accent then. You sort of stopped yourself.
Really?
Yeah.
Stop myself. Oh, yeah. Yes, my RP being like, no, Sebastian, no.
Mine's Darwin, by the way. I've gone for Darwin. I think a lot of people keep talking about him, and I don't think he's going to get the minutes.
Andy, this button hangs up. Did you know that?
Sorry, mate.
Yeah, this
Number 3. We've only got 3 more, and this one will be really, really quick. Who do you think is going to be the highest scoring goalkeeper, defender, midfielder, striker? Seb?
Alisson, Chilwell, Salah, Haaland.
Alisson, Chilwell. Oh, Chilwell. Salah, Haaland. Nice.
I didn't expect that.
Rich?
I've got Martinez, Trent, Salah, Haaland.
Ooh. See, I've gone for Pope, because I still, although Newcastle are tough to start with, I think they'll still be fine.
That's a shout.
Trent, Salah, and Kane. I think Haaland's going to do something this year, which means Kane's going to overtake him.
I like the idea that in a full season prediction game, Newcastle have got a hard start matters. It obviously doesn't. Everyone plays everyone.
Because
it doesn't
people
matter what order.
People will still think like that.
In my head, that made complete sense, and I was like, wait, that's complete nonsense.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I meant. People will think, oh, they've got a hard start, so I'll never go Pope. But I just think they'll still be fine all season.
Yeah, great shout.
Highest scoring new player. So this is a high scoring player that's changed team or has joined the league. Seb.
Originally Nkunku. With the injury, I'll give Jackson as a backup, just if that is 2 months, obviously, that's tough.
And Rich?
Okay, this is tactical. I'm going Onana because goalkeepers have a pretty steady floor.
That is a really good shout. If he gets like 150 and Nkunku misses some time, he could win that.
Done.
Anything above 140 is pretty good, isn't it?
I actually thought of it because Seb, you said about Flecken earlier.
Seb helping him. I've gone for Maddison.
I want the assist.
I've gone for Maddison.
Nice.
If Kane stays and they play in this attacking football we're all expecting, I've gone for that. And last question. Who will have the highest overall rank this season out of me, Seb, Rich, and the community team? Seb, who do you think?
Andy, this is your year.
Oh, you said that last year. And Rich?
I was going to say exactly the same thing. So I'm going to say community team now.
Lovely. Well, I'm going to go Rich because Rich he's been like this, and I think he's going to be on one of those years now. So I think he's going to be having a big year. Oh, triple Chelsea defence is going to come.
We've all got the same team, so we'll all have the same year.
Yeah,
it will just all be on transfers made.
Now then, I am going to bring up the community team because it's saved in my files. Here it is. So you boys haven't seen this at all. So we have asked Rank Chaser, who's in the chat. Thank you again, mate. He has got his people in his group chat, people that are part of the SCOUTCAST viewers every week. They have made the community team.
Oh, I'm going back to Andy again.
Yeah,
I'm joking.
They have got at the moment, and this is subject to change. They have got Onana in goal, Stones, Gabriel, Estupiñán at the back, so fairly standard at the back there. Bruno Fernandes, Matoma, Martinelli, Saka, and Maddison. No Rashford. Interesting. And then they've got Watkins and Haaland up top. They've got Areola, Chilwell on the bench, Kabore, and Mubama. Not a bad team. I'm not going to lie, lads. I've had some sneak peeks and some screenshots of their chats in the chat. They know what they're doing. And I don't like how we have given this to people that are going to want to beat us. They have
got a spy in there.
What's that? What?
You got a spy in there. They're sending you screenshots.
People are complaining as well that it's made them reach their DM limit in the chat. I think this team is pretty good. I think they're going to be good this year. There is a forfeit. If any of us don't beat them, we either, and it's one of two forfeits and we can choose now, either we have to appear on the very final stream in opposing jerseys of the team that we support. So, for instance, I'd have to wear Man City. Seb would have to wear any team because everybody hates Leeds.
I was going to say.
Yeah. And Rich, whoever the opposing team for Reading is. Who's the opposing team?
Yeah, you're going to struggle with that.
Yeah. I don't know.
I think it's England.
Team? England. Yeah.
England, yeah.
Or we have to turn up on the last stream wearing wrestling masks. So it's one of the two. So you two pick now. What do you want to go with?
I feel like the former is probably more stream friendly.
I like the masks.
So what mask?
Both you can have Kane.
Yeah. So sorted. So we'll all wear a Kane wrestling mask. That'll be weird when he's playing in the Bundesliga. So there you go. So lovely community team, and we will keep.
You can wear Lederhosen.
Yeah. What, and those big pint glasses as well. The
you mean?
Yeah, I've got one behind me actually.
You mean you aren't now? I
yeah.
I thought that was no.
Always. So wrestling mask then for game week 38. But that's only the people that lose to it. All right. So I think last year it would have been me and Rich, or maybe just Rich. I can't remember actually.
I think it was. Where did it finish?
Like 40k.
Yeah, I was 50.
Yeah, so I was 39. Lovely stuff. Keep that up. Right. So 960 people in the chat, pretty much kind of leveling out at about 1,000 people. Thank you so much. chuck us in some questions. We've got about 5 minutes to finish this off. Chuck us in some questions and we will answer them as quickly as possible, and we will answer as many as possible. Hope you've enjoyed it, by the way. If you have enjoyed the stream tonight, make sure you share it, make sure you talk about it, and make sure you give us a comment as well. We'd love to get I'd love to get 20,000 views before the season starts. That would be awesome. Right, so we're just waiting for a few questions to come in now. Here we go. Omar says, who would you bench game week 1? Mbumo, Pedro or Jackson? Oof, I'm assuming he's going strong. Seb, who would you bench out of those 3?
Jackson.
Jackson. And Rich?
Yeah, it would be Jackson.
Yeah.
But that seems like it's going to be a 3-4-3, and I'd question why you've got 3 strikers.
Yeah, big time. Rich, would you captain Jackson in game week 3? That's from David Hughes.
I mean, the answer's probably going to be no without looking at... Oh, home to Luton. No, still no.
No?
No, I mean, Man City got Sheffield United
Yeah.
in game week 3, so...
Seb?
Well, Rich said, thank you for doing the homework on that.
Yeah. Anguila says, Salah or no Salah, Seb?
Oh, we covered this, haven't we? No Salah.
Yeah. Rich?
No Salah for now.
Yeah. Rich, Bansverk says, is KDB an option?
Not right now. I mean, they was first minutes in the whole of pre-season were yesterday.
Yeah.
So, no. And to be honest, I'm quite glad because I don't need another headache. It's hard enough as it is.
Yeah. Seb?
No, breaks my heart, but no.
Fast Air says, do I bench boost in game week 1? Now, Seb, I'm going to go to Rich first because he was the first person I'd ever heard mention this, and it was on Surgery podcast years ago. So Rich,
slated.
Yeah, you did get slated. It was your first time being presenter on it, wasn't it? And it was like, everybody was like, who's this guy? So what do you think? Bench boost game week 1, yes or no?
I don't think this is the right season for it. I don't think we have the we don't have the enablers up front. There's not enough strikers right now.
Yeah.
Despite what we think with Pedro. So hard no.
Yeah. Seb?
Do you want to explain like the reason why you might do it sometimes though, Rich?
The reason I like the idea of it was getting rid of that chip. Yeah. When pricing wasn't as friendly, because pricing's really friendly now. When it wasn't friendly, it was nice to get rid of that so you didn't have to carry a strong bench. But I feel like a lot of people who bench boost game week 1 last year, they kind of had the same team when everyone else bench boosted because the player pricing was so generous. So I think it's 2 things now. I think it's the pricing's a big thing.
Yeah.
I don't think there's the big benefit of it was getting rid of that chip in game week 1 and not having it would almost simplify your strategy later in the second half of the season.
We did also have another wild card as well. Like the last couple of seasons, we've had, and I think that's made a big difference to get into those bench boost teams, like you said. But I get the idea. Seb, are you no bench boost for you?
Rich has answered that better than I could.
Yeah, lovely. Matteo Lonka says Rashford or Bruno if you had to pick one. Seb,
Bruno.
Rich.
Yeah, it's Bruno. It's the minutes, isn't it, and penalties.
Yeah,
that's a tough one though.
Yeah. Zoran says, what if Kane hauls in the first game week, Rich?
And Spurs might win. I don't know. I mean, it wouldn't change my mind on him. A bit like we said, he scored 4 in the friendly yesterday.
Yeah.
Just got to suck it up. You know, he could well do that.
Seb?
Yeah, I refer you to Rich's answer. Like, Kane is going to score goals and lots of them. Yeah. If you aren't picking him, you must be doing that in knowledge of that and you are okay with it.
Yeah. FPL Spartans, wouldn't Reading's nemesis be Oxford United? They nearly merged to become Thames Valley Royals, apparently.
No, that is true. That is true. I mean, the rivals of Reading, they're not proper rivals anymore, but
no.
I mean, maybe they'll become them. It's like Oxford, Swindon, Aldershot.
Yeah.
It's hard to have proper rivals when you're not a proper club, eh?
Apparently Bournemouth hate us and they're a big club.
Wow.
Bigger than Leeds.
Wow.
Yep, agreed.
Not as bad as Yeovil.
That was all I had back. That was weak.
Not as bad as Yeovil. We lost our first game to Hemel Hempstead on the weekend. So there you go.
Where's that?
Exactly.
In Hemel Hempstead,
down
mate.
south. Blue Boy says we haven't discussed Hoyland value. It came out at 7 million today. Seb, what do you think about Hoyland? Someone to watch for later because he's injured to start the season.
That's probably 0.5 cheaper than you might have expected,
yeah.
But I think Rashford and Bruno will almost always be, at first, are definitely better options. Maybe you'd rather have a defender before him. a bit like Onana, right? Man United players always get a lot of attention. It's a big fee. We discussed that last week. For FPL, it doesn't matter what they paid. He isn't necessarily an FPL player yet, right? You've signed someone who is going to progress into the productive forward you want. He isn't necessarily that yet.
Yeah, lovely. And what do you think, Rich?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it could be a reason. If you're a Man United fan and you don't go with Onana, you've still got that option down the line. If it does become a bandwagon, I don't think it will do. I mean, to be honest, actually, it probably will to a small extent. If he scores a brace, in a random game, maybe there'll be a bit of a bandwagon, but it's not. Well, like you said, he's injured anyway, so
yeah, exactly.
It could be worth keeping the spot open.
Yeah. Right, lovely stuff. Chat, thank you so much for being with us tonight. This is the last time we're going to be seeing you until Game Week 1 has started, which, remember, is on Friday night. I saw somebody mention today, it starts on Saturday, doesn't it? No, it is Friday night, so make sure you are locked in. I would say early to make sure that it is locked in, because you never know, servers could crash. It has happened before. We might get the Man City leak, we might not. Don't rely on it. Just make sure you lock your team in, I would say. But like I said, we will be here every Monday for you, and we'll be watching the United game next week while it is on, I would have thought. Rich, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, I have. I'm actually excited. You got me thinking then about there could be possible leaks on Friday. And if Rico Lewis starts, this could I could have a domino effect that ruins my season. But
love it. Ruin your season in Game Week 1. Seb, I hope you enjoyed yourself as well, bub.
Oh, yeah, I did. Thank you, mate. And thank you to the people doing the community team as well. Both for doing that. I'm really looking forward to losing to you, but also because you just mentioned a Friday night deadline, and I got to breathe a sigh of relief that I don't have to share my deadline with the community team anymore and accidentally captain Nick Pope.
Yeah, exactly. Lovely stuff. And we should say as well, I think Rich is going to be there, but me and Seb are definitely going to be at Fest on Friday. So if you wanted to come over and have a pint with us, if you've been watching us, feel free to do that. Rich is 50-50. He's not sure whether he's going to be there yet.
I'm going to try.
You never know. We've never had all the Scoutcast boys in the same room at the same time, so it'd be very exciting if it happens. If me and Seb are on our phones, it's because we're trading Pokemon, all right? So we'll see you. We'll see you next week. Thank you so much, and good luck for Game Week 1. Bye-bye.